There are moments in life when betrayal doesn't come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives quietly, in the form of an email. That's how it happened for a man named Miles Hartley, a 44-year-old architect living in Savannah, Georgia. Late one evening, he sat in his home office, staring at a message from his wife of 12 years. Kendra had told him she was away at a yoga retreat in Arizona. Instead, the email said something else entirely. "I've moved your inheritance into my personal account. It's better this way." Attached was a blurry photo. Kendra on a balcony at sunset, wine glass in hand, a man with a beard by her side. And the smile on her face. It wasn't the smile she had shared with Miles in years. He closed the laptop, walked into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. From the window, he looked out at the backyard they had once designed together. The stone path he had laid, the hydrangeas she had planted, all of it part of a home she clearly had no intention of returning to. That inheritance, $587,000 from his late Aunt Elaine, was not just money. It was a symbol, a gift from the woman who had raised him after his parents died, a woman who had worked double shifts to see him through school. When she passed, she left him everything with one note: build something that lasts. Now, his wife had tried to take it. Miles noticed the email lacked a greeting, not even his name. Just a declaration and the theft. He typed 6 words in reply. "Thanks for letting me know." Then he shut the laptop, finished his drink, and went to bed. And though he lay in that big empty bed alone, he slept better than he had in years. Because deep down, he already knew. She wasn't coming home. What Kendra didn't know was that Miles had sensed the shift long ago. She thought she was being clever. But in truth, her attempt had given him everything he needed. Miles first met Kendra 15 years earlier at an industry conference in Charlotte. She was young, ambitious, starting her wellness brand. He was 5 years into his career, hungry for projects beyond parking decks and office towers. She wanted a space for her first studio, and he was the architect who could design it. Within 3 years, they were married, and not long after that, they bought a craftsman home on Victory Drive, the one with the wide porch she had always dreamed of. For a while, life worked. He built structures, she built her brand. They traveled, entertained, and looked from the outside like the perfect couple. But time reveals what appearances hide. When his Aunt Elaine grew ill, Miles stepped away from work to care for her in Atlanta. 6 months of hospital visits, late nights, and quiet goodbyes. Kendra came only twice. "Hospitals depress me," she explained. He didn't argue. When Elaine passed, she left Miles more than he had ever expected. Careful investments, savings, all of it placed into his hands. Kendra's eyes lit up at the mention of it. "We should put it toward expanding the business," she suggested over dinner one night. But when she said the business, she meant hers. That was the first crack. And more followed. She started traveling more often. Supplier meetings, team retreats. Her phone lay face down on tables, and passwords suddenly changed. Conversations grew shorter, and sometimes, late at night, Miles would hear her voice drifting in from the backyard. Soft laughter, the kind of laughter she no longer shared with him. When he asked who it was, she smiled. Just Patricia from the studio. Patricia, who had left the company 8 months earlier. Then came the neighbor's remark. Frank, from next door, stopped by with bread one afternoon. "Saw someone drop Kendra off last week," he said casually. "Thought you were out of town." And Miles had been. A 3-day conference in Boston. He thanked Frank, but the words stuck. Finally, there was the call from his firm's advisor. Someone was trying to access his trust accounts, using his personal information, but failing the security checks. Miles didn't need to ask which accounts. He already knew. That night, Kendra suggested they simplify everything. Too many accounts, too many passwords. We should consolidate. She didn't meet his eyes. Miles nodded. "You're probably right," he said softly. "I'll talk to Jerry about it." The very next day, he drove to Atlanta and met with Rita Wallace, the attorney who had handled his aunt's estate. Rita listened carefully as he explained. "Your aunt was wise to establish the irrevocable trust," she told him. "The money is safe, and if anyone tried to access it without authorization, that's attempted fraud." Miles nodded. "Let's document everything, and I want alerts for every attempt." By the time Kendra packed for her yoga retreat, Miles already knew. He helped her load the bags, kissed her briefly goodbye, and watched her car pull away. Then he went back inside, opened their shared cloud folder, and found what he expected. Screenshots of his accounts, copies of statements, even notes she had scribbled about transfer fees. She had been planning it for months, but instead of rage, Miles felt something else. A strange calm. For the first time, he saw his marriage clearly. Not as love, but as a transaction. One she was now trying to end in search of something more profitable. 5 days later, the email arrived, the one where Kendra claimed she had already moved his inheritance. A bold lie, and yet it was all the proof Miles needed. He waited 24 hours before responding, not out of hesitation, but out of discipline. He wasn't going to react with anger or desperation. He would act with precision. First, he forwarded the email to Jerry, his financial advisor, and to Rita, the estate attorney. Both confirmed receipt, neither needed explanation. The evidence spoke for itself. Then he called Thomas Webb, a divorce attorney Rita had once quietly recommended during a casual conversation. Within hours, Miles was sitting in Thomas's office downtown, Rita joining by video call. Thomas leaned back in his chair as he read through the documents. The inheritance was never commingled with marital assets. It's protected by the trust. And here, he tapped Kendra's email, "We have an open admission of attempted financial misconduct. This is strong." "What's next?" Miles asked calmly. "We file for divorce immediately, citing fraud. Georgia law takes that seriously." So Miles signed the paperwork that afternoon. At 4:30, Kendra called. Her voice was sharp, dismissive. "You're being childish. This doesn't have to be difficult." "I agree," Miles replied evenly. "Then let's settle this like adults. The money is already moved. Fighting it will only cost more in legal fees." "Where are you staying now?" Miles asked, changing the subject. "That doesn't matter," she snapped. "Focus, Miles. I'll have my lawyer draft papers. It's better for both of us." He jotted down the name she gave. David Lawrence. "That's helpful," he said. Kendra mistook his calm for surrender. Her voice softened. "It's for the best. We've been drifting for years. Cleaner this way." "You're right," Miles answered. "Cleaner is better." When they hung up, he called Thomas again. "Her lawyer is David Lawrence." "Good," Thomas said. "We'll be in touch with him directly." That evening, Rita phoned. "The trust monitoring flagged 3 more access attempts today," she reported. "All blocked, and all traced back to Arizona. Scottsdale, not Sedona. We have timestamps and device IDs." Miles poured himself a glass of 20-year-old scotch he had been saving for their anniversary. He set it on the counter and let the truth sink in. Kendra thought she had set the trap, but in reality, she had walked straight into his. The very next morning, Miles drove to Brightstone Bank, where he and Kendra had managed their accounts for years. Harold, the branch manager, welcomed him into his office, but as he pulled up the records, his expression shifted. "There have been unusual withdrawals," Harold admitted. Regular transfers from your joint account to another account we don't recognize. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. How large? Miles asked. Harold turned the monitor so he could see 2,000, 3,500, then 47,000 just 2 weeks earlier, and the receiving account. Not with Brightstone, Harold said quietly. Northern Lakes Credit Union. Miles had never heard of it. He requested 6 months of statements, and Harold printed them without hesitation. Page after page of evidence. Kendra hadn't just tried to steal his inheritance. She had been quietly draining their shared accounts, building a new life elsewhere. When he returned to Thomas's office with the records, the picture was undeniable. Northern Lakes. Scottsdale. An apartment rented in her name. Over $178,000 gone. She's been planning this for a long time, Thomas said, scanning the printouts. And she wasn't planning alone, Miles added, because not long after, Thomas's assistant entered the room with an urgent message. David Lawrence was on the line. His voice, once confident, was tight. My client may have misrepresented certain aspects of the financial situation, he admitted. Given this new information, I believe it would be best to discuss a revised approach. Thomas kept his tone firm. The filing is already in motion. Divorce proceedings have begun. Documentation speaks for itself. After the call, Thomas looked at Miles and said quietly, Lawrence will drop her by the end of the day. No attorney wants to be tied to this. And sure enough, that evening, a courier arrived at Miles's door. Inside the envelope was a formal notice. David Lawrence was withdrawing as Kendra's counsel. Attached was a note from Thomas, just 2 words long. First domino. Moments later, Kendra's number lit up his phone. He let it go to voicemail. Then came 3 more calls, then a text. What the hell did you do? Miles didn't answer. Instead, while eating a quiet sandwich at the kitchen counter, he received an email from Rita. Subject line, update. The trust company had completed its investigation. Multiple unauthorized access attempts confirmed, IP addresses logged, a full report forwarded to their legal department. Potential criminal proceedings. No action was required from him. All he needed to do was wait. That night, Kendra sent another message. We need to talk. Now. Miles typed back a single line. Through your new attorney. Her reply came fast. You've overreacted. I didn't really move anything. He paused before answering. That's not what the logs show. A long silence followed. Then finally, this isn't about him. Miles's next message was only 1 word. Name. At last, she broke. Jason. Jason Berkeley. The name Jason Berkeley was all Miles needed to confirm what he already suspected. A tall man with a beard driving a grey Tesla. Frank, the neighbor, recognized him instantly when shown the photo. Yeah, that's the guy, Frank said. Dropped her off more than once while you were away. He even agreed to sign a sworn statement. By the end of that week, Kendra had hired a new attorney, Philip Barnes. Barnes was known for his aggressive tactics, the kind of lawyer who thrived on intimidation. He immediately filed for an emergency hearing, claiming Miles had acted in financial misconduct and abandoned his wife. Thomas just shook his head. They're desperate. Miles stayed calm. He knew the truth was on his side, and so Thomas prepared a package, a devastating file filled with evidence. The trust logs, the bank statements, the notarized testimony from Frank, even screenshots Kendra herself had left in their shared folder. Every detail neatly organized. That afternoon, the file was delivered directly to Barnes's office. Hours later, Barnes called back, his tone very different. My client is willing to discuss settlement, he said. Thomas leaned back in his chair. He's seen enough. They don't want this going before a judge. The proposed offer was simple. Kendra would keep what she had already taken. Miles would keep everything else. But Miles shook his head. No, she returns half of the joint account withdrawals, and she signs a non-disclosure agreement. I don't pursue fraud charges. It was a cold, clean end. The following Monday, what was supposed to be an emergency hearing turned into a private settlement meeting. Kendra sat across the table, Barnes whispering in her ear as Thomas laid out the terms. Through the glass walls, Miles could see her expression shift, from defiance to shock to resignation. Finally, she signed, her handwriting unsteady but final. Miles slid an envelope across the table. "These are the passwords," he said quietly. "To the cloud, the house alarm, anything else you need." Her eyes searched his face for anger or triumph. She found neither, only calm. "It was never about the money," Miles said softly. "That would have been simpler." Barnes guided her out of the room. She didn't look back. 6 months later, Miles sold the house on Victory Drive. Too many rooms, too many memories that couldn't be painted over. A young family bought it, delighted with the wraparound porch and the hydrangeas along the stone path. For them, it was a dream beginning. For Miles, it was closure. He moved into a loft downtown, closer to his firm. Less space, fewer things, but more peace. He set up his aunt's inheritance as a foundation for architectural scholarships, honoring the woman who had once told him to build something that lasts. The first scholarship went to a 17-year-old girl who had lost both parents. Her essay about designing spaces that heal reminding Miles of Elaine's quiet strength. Life became simpler, yet richer. Work, evenings by the river, dinners with friends who valued honesty. For the first time in years, he felt like himself again. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived in his mailbox. No return address. Inside was a check for exactly 89,275 euros. Alongside it, a note written in small, hurried letters. The rest of what I owed. No signature, none needed. Miles deposited the check the next morning, straight into the foundation. Another scholarship. Another life changed. That evening, he walked down to the riverfront where he and Kendra had once dreamed of building a wellness retreat together. He sat on a bench, the city lights flickering on the water, and felt a deep stillness settle inside him. His phone buzzed, Jerry reminding him about dinner plans, introducing him to a colleague, another architect. Miles smiled. Just enough time to go home, change, and meet the evening head-on. Because sometimes the strongest response to betrayal isn't revenge, it's rebuilding.